Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Betsy Greenleaf here with another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. I'm very excited today. We're going to be talking with Diana Lane, who's going to talk a little bit. Well, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things like combining traditional medicine and the woo. So we're going to talk about like the alchemy of medicine. And let's just get started and we'll just talk with Diana and find out more because she can explain it a lot better than I can. So thank you so much, Diana, for being with us today.
You're welcome. It's such an honor to share. I love talking about this kind of like nerdy scientific woo stuff. It's one of my favorite things to chat about because there is so much modern day science that backs up these ancient practices, and it's really wonderful to share.
How did you end up getting into this?
You know, it's funny. It always starts with the journey of the self. I was really young. I was in the ballet industry for quite some time. I grew up with, some unhealthy habits from that experience. I was 16 with multiple eating disorders, not really like taking care of this temple the way most teenagers don't, I suppose. And then it kind of dawned on me one day. I was like this Doritos and Dr. Pepper breakfast of champions kind of person in high school. And I was unhappy, unhealthy, even though I was super skinny and gangly. And I had a wake up call one day that just told me that this was not it. And so I started looking into my own personal reflection of how do I refine my being? How do I actually nourish my body and live in a healthier and more aligned way? And so I got into nutrition. Like that was the obvious, right? I quit ballet, started doing belly dancing. I was like, God, I need to go eat some extra burgers. Like now I'm way too skinny for this. And over time, it kind of developed this nuance of passion underneath me going, God, more people could live this way. And if we take care of ourselves, what else is possible? And so that journey of the self really sparked my interest in medicine. And then I realized that nutrition was like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more below that. And started studying it in undergrad and quickly became that like crazy meat and potatoes girl because I started asking about trophology and mixing foods. And if you put meat and potatoes, which take an acid and an alkaline to digest, well, doesn't that just create a neutral state? And kind of got pushed aside and shunned and shamed a little bit in my, not as progressive school and said, okay, well, if this isn't it, then what else? Like, well, obviously I'll become a doctor, right? Let's become a doctor. Let's get to the top, change it from the inside out. And what better way to save the world than by healing hearts? So I was in pre-med for cardiothoracic surgery up at Western Washington University, which is a great feeder school for UW. They have one of the best medical schools in the program. And then I was going to work my way to Harvard or Yale or Stanford, do that whole Ivy League thing. And it wasn't more than a couple weeks into my cardiac rehab internship that I realized that this system had a lot of holes in it and that people were getting worse and not better. I mean, I would go home from the program calling my mom, crying and being like, what can we do? And then I would ask my supervisors, see someone throwing a McDonald's cup out on the way in or kind of smelling like cigarettes and booze. And I'd be like, so can I talk to them about this? Like, can I talk about lifestyle interventions, water, whole foods, organic? And they kind of looked at me and said, that's not your job. Get them on the machines, take their vitals, make sure they're taking their prescriptions. Go home crying and then come back the next day and ask, well, how often are people coming back? Like what's the life expectancy? What's the return rates? And they said, well, they'll probably be back in 6 months and they're lucky if they make it 5 years.
And that's, oh my God, that is so crazy. I think you're so lucky that you figured out it soon. I was going to say, I think it probably took me 25 years of being in medicine to realize that our traditional medicine system is not about getting better. It's about triaging the symptoms that we have and just kind of like, all right, you have a symptom, you have a disease. Well, let's just triage you and like give you some medicines and try to cover it up. But it's not geared at like, let's look at what's the underlying cause and let's try to get you better. It's just like, okay, let's just cover it up for now. So, yeah.
Yeah, you really said it. It's a lot of Band-Aid treatments, and I really honor Western medicine. I value it so much. It's such a powerful tool. But unfortunately, when the toolbox is limited and you only have so much in your scope of practice, it makes it more challenging to create big changes. And so the next epiphany was like, well, how do I get people before that? How do I catch people before they're at end stage heart failure? And I looked into everything. I'm telling you, Ayurveda, naturopathy, acupuncture, osteopathic medicine, physical therapy. And I transferred to Evergreen to kind of do more of these diverse classes. And that's when it hit me. Acupuncture made the most sense. Such a holistic and comprehensive system. And do not be fooled, it was still just like med school because it was Eastern medicine and Western medicine, and half of it was in Chinese. And that is not a prerequisite for the program. So I really got a vast and broad understanding of the human body and integrative medicine. And I've been so grateful to evolve that practice since then to have kind of this fusion. I say it's the blend of science and woo, because there is a lot of science behind our inner alchemy, behind our chi, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There's so much backing that is finally catching up after 5,000 years of use, just really exemplifying how powerful this medicine is. And integration is really the key. Having more facilities and more hospitals utilizing holistic practitioners creates a really beautiful synergy for true transformation and working from what I call root branch, right? The branches are the things that we see, all the symptoms that we're trying to take care of, but what's happening in the constitution, like what is happening deep within the body with the balances and imbalances of micronutrients and macronutrients to create a whole being. So it's been really powerful work.
And I bring back up, you were talking about nutrition, and that's something that I myself have looked a lot into my patients, probably in the last like 8 years. And it amazes me that when we think about traditional medicine, you go back to Hippocrates in 440 BC, he said, let food be thy medicine. And I'm like, wait a minute, why we got away from all that, So there's so much in the ancient medicine, all the different types of ancient medicine that really complement what's going on today. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, you really said it. This type of self-reliance and self-reflection and refinement has been around for centuries. The ancient medicine really had a powerful capacity to create big change in people's lives. And nutrition is the foundation of it all, right? Like nutrition is the basis of our well-being. And the closer we get to nature, obviously with, modern medicine supplementing that and innovative medicine supplementing that. But we have gotten so far away from the root of it all that, we often are looking for quick fixes or for, that easy way out. And it's a relationship with not just our body, but our food and our surroundings, and even our environment can affect us. You think about summer heat, and this was like my big epiphany in school. Summer heat. When it's hot outside, we're red, we're sweaty, we're a little bit more irritable. We want lots of cold water, and we want things like melon, right? Like watermelon and cucumbers. That is literally the effect of summer heat on our bodies. And when I got more and more into the relationship we have with our environment, our food, and ourselves here as well, the more sense it made. And unfortunately, what I found is that not a lot of Western practitioners, if this is not their specialty, it's not even, I think it's like one course in med school, or maybe two courses. You spend like 36 hours or something like that studying nutrition. And I feel like it's a really lost art of the foundation of medicine.
Yeah. And where have, you felt like you've made the biggest difference in what you're doing for people?
Yeah, mindset is huge, right? Like we have to work through the inner and outer blockages to our healing. That can be one of the biggest challenges to getting over the hump, so to say, and really captivating the essence of nutrition. And then the other thing is working with the GI. Got to work with the gut. GI imbalances are everything. The microbiome, the more we learn about the microbiome and dysbiosis, that's usually where we go right into is figuring out what's happening internally, and then working on the cultivation of our chi, of our alchemy, of our energy, and utilizing this kind of comprehensive and holistic system to heal from the inside out.
Yeah. So you know what? I wanted to ask you too, you still bring acupuncture into all this too. And, for people that don't understand acupuncture, I know it's probably something you could talk about for hours, but can you give us a basic understanding about it?
Yeah, so here's what I love about acupuncture. This is an ancient rooted system of alchemy and energetic transformation. I love to explain it in really basic fundamental concepts. The most powerful conduction of energy happens with water and metal. And humans, we are primarily made of water, and our stainless steel surgical needles are filiform needles, right? So they're not like what you think of when you're going to like the doctor or the dentist. I'm a pansy with that kind of stuff. I get my blood drawn. I'm like, oh, mommy, but acupuncture needles are so fine, like a couple strands of hair. Most of the time, you don't even feel them going in, and they're placed on energetic sulcuses in the body. So, different areas that are called neuromuscular junctions, where there are more nerve root bundles, but less energetic resistance in these areas. You can prove them now with modern day medicine, which I love, with cytotopography or a CT scan, where they use beams of light to show areas of energetic resistance. And all of the acupuncture points just so happen to have little centers in them. So what we're doing is we're utilizing these little tags and we're stimulating certain areas of the body. And I'll be honest, with a tiny micro trauma, right? We're inserting a needle, we're telling the mind to wake up and to go pay attention to what we're stimulating in that area. So it's a relationship with the body and these points. And then what that does is it releases endorphins, enkephalins, cytokines, natural killer cells, oxytocin, phagocytes, macrophages, basically all the big healers in the body get released by acupuncture to support you in your goals and your transformation of your health and well-being.
I find this amazing. I mean, I always knew of acupuncture as a modality, but I didn't get to experience it myself until I was in a car accident a few years ago. And luckily, my orthopedic doctor had an acupuncturist within the office, and they were like, we want to get you into massage and acupuncture immediately after your car accident. And I was like, okay. And I remember walking in there with back pain, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, this is going to work. I walked out of there without back pain, and I was like, oh my God, just from a couple little needles you stuck in my body, like no back pain. I was like, I don't know anything else in traditional medicine that would have made a difference that quickly. And I know it's not like that for everybody and all the time, but it was so dramatic. So
I always say skeptics make the best believers. I've had so many patients coming into my clinic either because their wife told them to, or their friend told them to, or they were in an MBA case and somebody else referred them. I work with the Veterans Association, and so they will often send patients. And, a lot of times it's not your usual acupuncture goer who comes in from the Veterans Affairs. And I've had so many people go, I came in here thinking this wasn't going to work, and I'm surprised, and I wish I had found you sooner. So that is like the biggest honor and blessing. Someone who's been to specialists, been to doctors, been passed around from physician to physician, and they come in and they just go, wow, like I did not know what to expect, and I'll see you next week. And that's really like the magic of this medicine, is that it is so potent. And I love hearing that, you had this kind of one-off experience right off the bat where it was like introduction to medicine, acupuncture medicine, how powerful it can be.
And then I'll just wrap it up before we go into a commercial, but really quickly, what amazed me was walking in there, not thinking it was going to work. And we know that the power of the mind, I'm like, could you imagine how much more of a response I would have gotten if I walked in with the mindset that it was going to work? So, so we'll come back after the commercial break and we'll talk about this some more.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
So we're back with Diana Lane talking about alchemy, inner alchemy, woo, nutrition, acupuncture, all this fun stuff. So, I wanted to bring up, you mentioned the word chi. And I have to honestly say, I've heard the word, I know it has something to do with wellness, but I don't really even know what chi means.
It's funny. I get this question all the time because people are often like, is chi even real? Like, what does that mean? And the way I explain chi is from a basic scientific foundation. So chi is known as the vital life force, right? It is known as the driving force that moves the blood through the body. And when you start to extrapolate that scientifically, chi and ATP are the same thing. ATP is that action potential that happens in the exchange of calcium on the ionic plates that then causes energy, right? So the way the Krebs cycle is utilizing B vitamins and things to generate ATP, and then ATP is that driving life force behind all of our capacity. So chi and ATP are one in the same. That is really the basis of it all.
I love this. Going back to my biology 101. So I learned about the Krebs cycle and ATP, which, thinking about that too, when sometimes some of my patients get a little resistant when I talk about doing acupuncture or something like this. But when we talk about woo and the body's all energy, it is all energy. I mean, an EKG, when they put those pads on your chest, they're picking up the electrical energy in your body and it's transmitting it into a graph. And that's how we can see your heart. So we know, I mean, for me to move my arms and fingers and legs, that there has to be chemical energy that's getting converted into electrical energy to make my muscles move. So it's really not that woo-woo. It really is based in science. So
yeah, you really said it. I mean, the whole universe is energy. It's atoms and molecules and protons and neutrons and electrons held together by ionic and covalent bonds. And that is literally just energy, right? So if we can recognize that there's energy obviously in the universe, energy within us, and it's just a difference in name, and what I always let people know with this medicine, it's been around for 5,000 years for a reason. It has withstood the test of time, the fall of the Chinese Empire, the rise of the Yellow Emperor, and really has been a practice utilized over the centuries throughout various cultures and is now more and more being integrated into large hospitals because of how effective it is for pain and migraines and PTSD and palliative cancer care. The list goes on. I joke and say I can treat anything from allergies to zits, and that's pretty true.
I wanted to ask you, when patients or clients come to you, like, where do you typically start with someone?
Yeah, so my first session is typically a 2-hour session, so we can do a full medical intake. I start with their primary causes and their primary symptoms, what's going on with their life. And then we ask what's called the 10 questions, which really feels like 100 questions because I want to get the full story. So we'll go into, are you hot or cold? Do you sweat abnormally or profusely? What's your appetite like? And then it's a review of systems. So head, eyes, ears, nose, throat, mouth, all the way down into the heart and the lungs, the digestive system, and then some of the nuanced things around emotions. So depending on what their presentation is, we'll typically go after the symptomology to begin, but I always explain that it's a root branch treatment, that I really want the accumulative benefits of these treatments over time. Just like working out and eating healthy, you really have to do these things a little bit more consistently to fill the cup, right? And a lot of times people will come in with, 20, 30-year-old injuries, things they kind of been stuffing down for a long time. And I always have to buffer expectations. I wish I could just put myself out of business and be a miracle worker that gets it all done in one session. And that is one of the biggest challenges is really managing people's expectations, because more often than I'd like, I've had patients who, were in special forces, were really hard on their body and, have been dealing with severe back pain for 20 years, have had surgeries, and I get 3 sessions in. And even though they're reporting results and noticing changes, it doesn't feel fast enough for them. So that is one of the biggest things, is really working on the mindset around healing and then starting to implement, usually I start with nutrition. If someone's eating gluten, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm Italian. I don't want to have this conversation with you either. I used to eat bread with pasta on it, and that is out of my life now. And it's made a really big difference in many of my patients' lives, just starting with something like big but small, like going gluten-free. And then each session builds on the last. So they're all unique. They're all tailored to the presentation, and they create change, sometimes instantly and sometimes over time.
I agree. I wish I had the magic wand that I could just like wave over somebody and make them instantly better, because I see that so many times. It's so difficult. And I understand the frustration, for the patients that are living with it. And then for us as practitioners, because we want to heal. But when someone's made the decision now that they want to do something to heal, they're like, okay, I want to get fixed yesterday. And usually it's like, well, this has taken years and years and years to accumulate. We can't just undo it with one session. What do you find how does the role of emotions play in what you're doing?
It's really interesting because the internal state and the internal mind definitely reflect our external experiences. And I don't know if it's just the nature of who I am as a person, but I tend to attract a lot of women specifically going through deep emotional changes or processing through anxiety. I have treated a lot of heartbreak, which is really interesting. I have a really dear friend. She's one of my favorite stories because she was the biggest skeptic. She did not believe in acupuncture or herbal medicine and went through a really grievous heartache, and finally hit me up after days of not sleeping, days of not eating, just totally feeling out of sorts. And I said, come in, I'll set you up with a couple supplements and herbs. She messaged me the next day and she said, I slept like a rock. I don't know what kind of magic this is, but you're amazing. And so it's really fun watching those inner changes. Emotions are everything, and they're tied to our organs, right? So like the liver, for example, which is the great detoxifier. It's also known as the general in Chinese medicine. It's the charge, let's do this, let's get things done, along with the gallbladder. The liver is also our house of stress. So the poster child is the road rager, right? The person who's irritable and angry, or the snappy mom. That's the over energy.
Or the Karen that we see in social media now. The liver's the Karen.
Seriously. So the Karen is an example of liver qi stagnation, right? It's the essence of the liver working through the emotion. Whereas something like the lungs house grief, right? You think about it. When you're feeling grief and it feels heavy on your lungs and your chest, and maybe you're sobbing or crying, that is the expression of the lungs. So we work really often with the energetics of the organs and how they affect our emotions. So we do a lot of balancing, a lot of breath work, a lot of qigong, a lot of visualization, sound healing, kind of the whole shebang in our sessions. So it's really comprehensive, because the biggest detriment to modern day medicine, and I'm sorry for those of you who don't like me saying this, but it's the separation of mind and body, man. That was the biggest split in our comprehensive and holistic approach to treating humans as one being instead of this mind-body separation.
And that's something I find so frustrating all the time, because I'm like, I can offer somebody the most perfect, statistically, great treatment that's got 99% success rate. Nothing really has that high, but theoretically I could offer that. But if their mind is not there, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Same thing, I could offer them in traditional medicine a pill, and if they don't believe it's going to work, it's not going to work. So I always find it very difficult. I'm always talking to patients about, we got to work on the mind, but that's not something I can do for them. And that's where, as a practitioner, sometimes it gets very frustrating. So how do you, encourage clients to really work on their mindset and just their thought process?
Yeah, you said it, the placebo effect is a powerful thing. I think it's estimated that it has 30% efficacy, which is really high in comparison to the efficiency of most things, right? So we are often working on limiting beliefs in our clinic. We talk a lot about the tough stuff. I have been through miscarriages with patients. I've been through life-changing diagnoses with patients, through death and infant death, through all of these things. And really starting with self is the key. So I'm often referring patients to read books. My two favorite referral books are A Path with Heart by Jack Kornfield and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
I love that one. That's one of my favorites.
So good. Such a powerful book. And we do a lot of mantra and affirmation and things along those lines, helping people guide themselves through some of these aspects. We'll even go into some deeper practices. We've done inner child work, we've done shadow work, forgiveness work, Ho'oponopono, like releasing old energies and working on detoxifying the mind as well as the body is so important. So I often am a noodle at the wall kind of person. I will give my patients lots of tools and lots of skills, because if I only get an hour and a half with you, that means you have so much time to be working with yourself and your own exploration. So I try to give a lot of tools to each of my patients so they feel really empowered in their healthcare.
I laughed because Allergan, who's the maker of Botox, years ago were trying to get approved for the use of Botox for depression. And so people were like, how's Botox, treat depression? And I'm like, it doesn't, it just, you can't frown. And so there's this neurofeedback that when your face is unable to frown, or if you force your face into a smile position, your brain gets this message that like, oh, I must be happy. And then in return makes happy hormones. So I just tell people, first of all, they didn't get approved for that use, but it's a lot cheaper just when you're feeling out of sorts, force yourself to smile.
And I'll teach my patients like the yes vibes. I mean, there is something about just standing and going, yes, that is so empowering. It feels funny. It feels silly. Laughter usually ensues. But I love that, just like the power of the mind, the power of just putting a smile on, and how potent that can be.
Sometimes when I'm in my car by myself and nobody can hear me, I'll like yell and scream affirmations, because it's probably the only time I'm really by myself that no one's going to hear me if I say these kind of crazy things. So
scream therapy is real. I tell you what, I tell my patients all the time, and this is something that my mom actually taught me when I was really young, is I'd go scream it out in a pillow instead of throwing a tantrum, and just releasing that energy. So I always invite people, scream in your car, go out to the woods and let a good yell out. Just release. That is anger and energy releasing from the body. So I always like doing little practices as well. You can just rub your hands together and just place them over your eyes. That helps calm anxiety. Rubbing your hands together, placing them over your heart, or one on the heart and one on the womb. These are such powerful practices to transmute energy. And then something called Qigong shaking. I love doing this with kids because kids embody it. You literally stand with your feet about hip width apart and just shake. It's a parasympathetic nervous system release. We even see this in nature. Animals of prey who get away from their predator, like deer, they go out into the fields and they just, they shake it all off. So we can use that release techniques to just like, you have a yucky day or a yucky experience, like, oh, just get that stuff off, like tap it off, release it. So these are all tools that can be so powerful. Highly recommend incorporating little bits of like Qigong like that into your life, because even if you're just feeling a bit of tension in the heart, you can just tap the heart. Or if you're feeling like you're not quite as alert and aware, you can just tap the top of the head, a point called Bai Hui, also known as Do 20, where all the vessels converge. Little easy practices that can make huge differences in your life, because our internal alchemy will always be exemplified in our external states.
this is great. Where can people find out more information about you?
Yeah, definitely. You're welcome to find me either on Facebook, Diana Lane, or my practice is moonmedicinemagic.com. I do try to share information there, as well as, throughout various platforms. And I've got some YouTube videos and some things that are on their way in the not too distant future as well.
So I invite everybody to go check out her social media and her website. Also, don't forget to check out my website and social media. And more importantly, go check out WYTV7.org, where you can find out about other great programming and what we're doing in the community. Don't forget to press on that donate button, because every little bit helps us to do all great things. You can see our scholarship programs, how we're supporting people in the community, and also helps us to bring wonderful programs like this. So once again, Diana, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you all. It was an honor.
And don't forget to tune in again for next week for another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit.